You are now listening to the Hope Health Community podcast.
I love what both of you are saying is that they have to get comfortable because it's for the betterment of the person who's dealing with the cognitive impairment. But I've been in conversations with people where they're like, no, that's not really who they are. That's the dementia doing that. We're talking about the reality that people are not comfortable.
Yeah.
And this is where the shifts have to happen, right? That people may feel protective of the person dealing with dementia and says, I'm going to isolate them for their benefit. But then what you're saying, Glenna, is that isolation may not be the best solution for them.
Isolation is never for their benefit. Isolation is often about us.
Welcome back to another episode of Hope Health Communication, but no, we're changing that to community, right?
Yes, Hope Health Community. We are all about the hope. We are obviously public health scholars, and we've been talking about health topics this whole time. And we are about the community. That is our rooting, that is our grounding, and we're here to be a part of yours. And welcome back to our podcast. We're so happy to have you today. We've been talking a lot about like how we look after each other, right? As moms, a lot. I feel like that's a theme that comes through a lot of our conversation. Like the role of nurturing in our families, in our communities, in our churches, in our extended families, and what that does to our health, right? Like being strong, being,
everything for everybody.
Everything for everybody. Having to be strong even when we are ourselves not so well. And so today we have this incredible guest, and I can't wait for you to introduce her because we're talking about something that really impacts so many of our families. We have personal stories that relate to this topic. And interestingly enough, I'm still trying to understand why this topic is still taboo. So that's something that I want us to kind of dig into, because it feels like when it comes to health topics, we're still very silent about so many of them. Yeah. And yet people are living with it. They're caring for family members. They're dealing with it every day. And so when we talk about community, what we're really saying is, how can we build community? How can we build community through hope for better health outcomes? So we're so grateful.
That real well, Rochelle.
Oh, thank you.
Perfect. That was perfect, honestly. And we're not scripted. We're talking to you.
We really aren't.
Yes. So I'll jump right in because I can't wait to also bring up this very special colleague, but mostly my sister, my friend, Dr. Glenna Brewster. And she does amazing work in the area of dementia and caregiving. She's very collaborative, so have ties to many different people and also places. She does work domestically as well as internationally. She goes back home to give back to her community and see what's going on there to improve health outcomes there as well. So I don't want to, take away from how she introduces herself. I would love to bring her in, and we'll allow her to introduce what it is that she does and just who she is as a person, like personally, because we all bring something to the work that we do, right? And I think that's really how we anchor a lot of what we talk about. Like, it's evidence-based practice, and we want to show people that we are doing the work to make sure that what's being done is acceptable to the community, but also, we're doing it in a rigorous way to ensure that, we're going through the processes to bring interventions to them, but also like, how do you really apply this stuff to your life? It's application of it. And so, without further ado, welcome Dr. Glenna Brewster.
All right. So thank you both for having me on the podcast.
Welcome.
Hope Health Community. That's
yes.
Awesome.
you got it already. So, Dr. Brewster, do you? So we usually refer to each other on a first name basis, but we, whatever you prefer. Would you like Dr. Glenna, Dr. Brewster? How would you like us? to refer to you.
Glenna is totally fine since we're
Okay.
all on first name basis here.
We are. It would
Well,
be hard for me to keep calling you Dr. Brewster just because
Right.
we're sisters, like, you know. But with that said, if you could give us just a brief overview of the work that you do, and just kind of, even if you want to sprinkle in a little bit about personal life, you can do that as well.
Sure. So I am an assistant professor at Emory in the School of Nursing, and I mainly focus on improving sleep outcomes in caregivers and care partners and people living with cognitive changes. And for cognitive changes, that ranges from mild cognitive impairment across the trajectory to dementia.
Mhm.
And I am also working now on improving sleep outcomes for African American congregants. So I'm collaborating with a colleague where we are providing sleep education in churches and working on improving sleep outcomes for African American congregants. I
Mhm.
also co founded an organization in St. Vincent, the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Alzheimer's Disease and Dementia Association, where our goal there is to increase awareness and develop and provide supports and resources for families affected by dementia. So, those are kind of the three things I'm working on currently. I have funding for and I'm recruiting for the sleep intervention study with caregivers and people living with cognitive changes. So they get to work together if they have sleep issues to see whether or not they can improve their sleep. And this is behaviorally. So they're doing things
Mhm.
behaviorally to see whether or not they can improve their sleep.
I need to be in
I
that
am
study.
well,
I'm
you got to
like,
have
where did
somebody
I
living with
sign up?
cognitive
I
changes,
know, but
and you don't.
listen, you're right.
And I'm also a mom, so I have a 3-year-old daughter who thinks she's three going on 30. So she gets to order me around and tell me what she can and what she wants to do and what she doesn't want to do and how she wants to do it. So that's been a really growing learning experience there
Amazing.
yes, as we both figure it out, because
Oh yeah.
parenting is an individual thing I'm learning too.
Mhm.
Yeah.
For
It's
And
sure.
yes.
mm,
And I'm also, I used to be a secondary caregiver for my grandmother. So my grandmother had a stroke and then she lived with vascular dementia for a few years before she passed away. So I do have
mm,
that lens that I often see my research through.
mm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I don't know if I knew that, Glenna.
Yeah. My mom cared for her in St. Vincent, and then she came up
Yeah.
here and she lived with us for about a year and a half, and
Okay.
then she went back home. Yeah, then my mom cared for her there too.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. 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 I'm like, where do we start? Like you had me at sleep for real,
Yeah.
because
Right.
sleep has already been is always not always. I think ever since I had kids, and I have my oldest is 16 now, and ever since I had kids, I don't think I've slept well. And
Mhm.
the normalization of that, right? Because I remember telling my mom, she's like, "You're never gonna sleep good again," because of the concern of the kids and stuff like that. But now they're older and they're fine. I'm not like waking up and checking on them, but I still feel like the sleep is so, far from,
Mhm.
you almost get anxiety about bedtime, right? And so
Mhm.
I can't wait to hear like what you've learned in studying this behavior, because sleep it is a behavior before it's a state, right?
Right.
Yes.
Winding
Mhm.
down. So it's just kind of hearing about the research of all of that, and just, I mean, the congregants working with faith leaders, I love that. And then, just absolutely getting into the conversation around dementia, which is what I was signaling earlier, is like it's still a taboo topic, I
Yes.
think, in a lot of Black families, and yet so many people I know, even in my own family, has someone who's either living with dementia currently
Mhm.
or has passed away from dementia. So I don't
Mhm.
know where you want to start, because all of it sounds amazing.
Well, I want to sprinkle in a little something because I know my sleep hygiene is horrific.
Mm,
It's terrible. And I think part of it is once I became a parent, that adding that layer onto that. But there are so many distractions, like my phone. And now
Yeah.
my phone is even saying, okay, take a breath, or
Yes.
it's 9 o'clock. It's telling me, and I'm just ignore, like, and I probably should be doing what the phone say to do, because I need to rest. And it's like 1 o'clock in the morning, but I'm just ignoring it. I think for me, and somebody pointed this out like yesterday, because I quite honestly, the other day, I did not go to sleep. It was 4:30 in the morning, and I have to get my kids up at 5. So I was like, oh, I might as well not go to sleep. So like, I know personally that for me, it's a distraction, because either I cannot get my mind to stop
Mhm.
thinking, and like, I got so many other things I want to do, or I'm doing, or blah blah blah. So I'm intrigued by sleep too, and the fact that you study sleep is fascinating to me. And so I'm hoping, and I'm sure I'll get some gems from what you're teaching caregivers. I think I know where I'd like to start, because
Mhm.
you mentioned you're the parent of a 3-year-old, Miss Ellie, Princess Ellie, I call her, and then you had some caregiving
Mhm.
responsibilities when it came to your grandmother at some point. Um, what would you say is the difference, what makes caring for someone with dementia unique from just the general caregiving elements, and being a mom, as an example of caregiving, a caregiving role? What makes dementia kind of unique in that way, and in the way of caregiving?
So there are a few things that I think about with that. First, when you're a parent, you are able to oftentimes say to your child, you shouldn't do that, you can't do that, let me protect you in this way. And they tend to listen to you when you're giving them instructions. When
Mm-hmm.
you're caring for somebody who's living with cognitive changes, across the range to dementia, many
Mm-hmm.
times these are older adults. These are people who you have a different type of a relationship with. So you have to thread the needle carefully, because I can't tell my mom not to do that anymore because she was the one who used to tell me what to do. And now she's like, why are you trying to tell me what to do? I'm the mom in this relationship, or the dad in this relationship, or the spouse. I can't take on the role of, which I eventually have to, of directing what it is that they do and making decisions about them and for them, because your how you think about stuff, how you make decisions are changing and have changed. So the
Mm-hmm.
dynamic, because I think of the relationship status, makes it difficult for caregivers. And then
Yeah.
oftentimes too, especially in the earlier stage,
Mm-hmm.
the person who's living with the cognitive impairment may not want to allow the person who's going to eventually be their caregiver to take on this responsibility. So there is this dance that you have to do as you move into additional responsibilities. And sometimes before you move into the responsibilities, it might be something drastic that happens. You might see the signs there, but it might be, God
Mm-hmm.
forbid, like an accident happened, or they got lost in a familiar place. So they were accustomed to coming
Mm-hmm.
home, they knew the route to get home, and all of a sudden one day they don't know where they're at. They took the wrong route and they can't get home, or they left home, went walking, and they can't find their way back home. And you
Mm-hmm.
don't know when this is going to happen, right? It can just randomly happen one day as the disease progress. Or it can be that they were accustomed to managing their bills, paying their bills,
Mm-hmm.
and that was, I think this happened a lot more before you had auto pay,
Oh,
where
okay.
they would have to go in and physically do it or go in online and do it. But now you have autopay, you might have this happen less often. So they would forget to pay a bill, or forget to pay their bills for many months, and then something gets cut off.
Mm-hmm.
And now you have to kind of think back about why this happened. I've also talked to people where they've made investments or they've given away significant sums of money, or they're sending significant sums of money to different people. And that is when you may think, okay, something is going on here and I have to figure out how to step in. And this once more comes back down to the relationship status and what that person who used to be independent can no longer do for themselves, and figuring out how to take that role on.
Yeah.
And I didn't have Ellie then when my grandmother was here. My grandmother actually passed away 3 days after Ellie was born.
Oh wow.
Yes. So, but I think about sandwich caregivers, right? We are
Mm-hmm.
having children older these
Mhm.
days. So because we are having children older, as both women and men, because both can be caregivers, then we
Mhm.
have young children, and then we're taking care of our aging parents or parents who are living with cognitive changes. And so that means we're going to see way more sandwich caregivers. So you have to manage your responsibility as a spouse, usually as a mother, and now as a child. And
Mm.
how do you maneuver in those roles? Because, and then you may have work, because if you're a sandwich caregiver, more
Yeah.
than likely you're still employed.
Unless you're
So
independently wealthy.
yes, yes, unless that. We shall knock on wood for all of us to
That's
be
right.
that.
We're getting there, right? We're trying.
Yeah. So with that, you can see the challenge there too,
Mhm.
in wanting to, because you want to be great for everybody, but
Mm,
it's hard for you to be great for everybody and also be great for yourself, which is where it
Mhm.
comes back to caregivers not sleeping well.
exactly.
Because if you have
Yeah.
to do all these things, the time you have to do many of these things might be after everybody's asleep. And when everybody's asleep, I now find the time to catch up on everything.
Yeah.
But in catching up, I am also losing my opportunity for sleep.
Mm.
And if you're taking care of somebody who has sleep difficulties also, so they might take a lot of naps during the day and sleep during the day, then at night they're awake and up and pacing, so then you can't sleep either.
Mm.
So,
Yeah.
so
There's so much. So, but have you ever heard of revenge sleep? The revenge time, like before sleep? Like
no.
where
Mm-mm,
it
mm-mm,
might be like a social media thing, right? Like not an actual scientific term, but it's the time where, and I may even be saying the wrong term, but it's basically when the kids go to bed, the mom in particular will stay up later because that's her only time that
Mhm.
she has to herself. And it's
mm-hmm,
not even about work. It's just like you just want to, you're just up because you're never alone. And so you need this time before you actually fall asleep. But then you end up going to bed late, which then cycle goes on and on. So I'm just thinking like all the responsibilities on one's plates is already going to make people feel overwhelmed and tired. It's just too much. It's too much for one person, right? So sleep ends up being the thing that we give up first. And I can imagine that even with food, because like they talk about sleep patterns and obesity, kind of.
mm-hmm.
So there's such strong associations there
Yes.
in terms of health outcomes, right? But it makes sense. Lifestyle, right, is
Mhm.
is harmed the most when you are giving up your life to support other people, right? And so, but I want to go back to something else before we go to that, because you talked about being in the sandwich caregiver and the relationship status.
Mm-hmm,
So for me, I'm a family health scientist. I look at family like, what is happening within the family in terms of the health outcomes. And if we're talking about Black families in particular, um, I can imagine, and I feel like I saw this even with my grandfather, who had dementia, and passed away 4 years ago now. That because he was the patriarch and was so beloved, and he was this authority figure, to
Mhm.
watch him go from literally like our priest on earth, right? And then dwindle into someone that's on a bed and is like this big, and just watch the weights, and all of that,
mm-hmm,
and watch his authority kind of go just dwindle. It was really hard for me as a granddaughter to understand how to interact with him. Going
mm-hmm,
from my grandfather who had call for prayer, call for inner whatever, guidance, laughter, all these powerful things, and then us kind of being his support at the end. And I remember watching my aunts who were his caregivers really struggle and say, you know, daddy, you have to eat, like having to
Mhm.
treat him as a child. And because in our culture, parents have such strong authority roles.
Mhm.
There is no gray area between the role of the parent and the role of a child in a lot of Black cultures, right? It's like
Mhm.
this authority is so high, and then you watch that authority kind of disappear. So I'm even thinking, like, how do the folks that you talk to and participants in your study, what do they say when it comes to that, just that role reversal and just managing the relationship when you had such expectations of the person that you are now caring for?
As I think about this, so this is complex, right?
Mm-hmm,
And when we have to, so one of the things I always say, so we do our best to try to not think about the person as, like, now I have to think about how I will maybe manage a child approach, because this is still an adult. And then, now that we are the ones who are living with normal cognitive function, we have to adjust how we are conceptualizing who this person is in front of us. This is still
mm-hmm.
my dad, this is still my grandmother,
Mhm.
but now the disease that they have is creating changes in who they are as a person. So
Yeah.
how do I adapt and change myself, because I'm the one who has to change, because they may not have as much control over their ability to change because of this progressive disease.
Mm.
Wow.
But I can still do things to enable and ensure that they have a good quality of life, right? So I
Mm-hmm.
can still find things for them to do and participating that they enjoyed. So if he likes, my grandmother was a church going person to her
Mm-hmm.
death.
Mm-hmm.
And so we always still, even after she lived with vascular dementia, when she was up here with us, she
Mhm.
went to church with us. And we
Mm-hmm.
ensured that the people in the church, they knew, but we always saved space. So she would pray still every Sunday. She would
Mm.
still give her testimony. So even if many Sundays it might be the same things that she repeated, there was
Right.
still value in that, not only for her, but for us, because we recognize that here's this person who might be living with dementia, but she's still able to do this and to still contribute. So finding
Wow.
ways that they can still participate. I also think that because we might have this fear of judgment, because people are now saying, oh well, this person is living with dementia, that we don't want to take the person out for them to
Mhm.
still interact with and live life. When my grandmother was here, we went to Jamaica, we went to the supermarket still, we whenever I went to conferences, we traveled and drove to conferences together. So
Mm.
a few conferences I went, it was her, my mom, and I at the conference. And I
Mm.
always say that to people. I bring myself wholly and fully to who I am. So now when I go to conferences, many times it's me, mommy, and Ellie.
Mm.
Because if I'm to do this work, then I have to do this work with them integrated into what I'm doing.
Mhm.
I can't leave them separately. This is who I am. So I think we have to be comfortable with saying to people, my loved one is living with dementia, but they're here showing up for me and with me. And if we go to church and they can do something that they can still contribute and participate, if that's what they like to do, then let them do that. And making space for, if they are able to, we don't want, because different churches have different lengths of time. So my church lasted for an hour. My grandmother could tolerate that. But if you have a church that goes for 3 hours, maybe they go for the part that they really enjoy the most. And then
Mm.
when that part is finished, then you can leave and go home, take a break, and do that. If it was, so find and identify what things they like. My
Mm.
grandmother loved taking care of us. So she would, take the broom up and sweep the floor. Sometimes when I did
Mhm.
the dishes, she would come and I would wash and she would rinse them out. So finding ways to still interact with them and make sure that they're still doing the thing they like, and enjoy as they're going through the process. We talked a lot, listening to the stories that they told, because they could still
Mhm.
communicate. So we
Right.
could hear
Mhm.
about the stories that they had to tell when they were younger and what they did and how they did that.
Mm,
So I think it comes down to, this is where the education and the awareness comes in.
mhm,
Because when we know what the disease is, when we're educated about the disease and how it progresses, then we're able to better say, okay, it's not the person, it's the disease. And
mm,
how do I need to adapt so that I can understand, is there something that's going on that's making them uncomfortable? Why they're pacing this way? Or
mhm,
why they've decided that they're anxious and feels like that? And do I need to fulfill some need that they have that they may not be able to say that they're feeling?
No,
So
that's powerful. Woo,
yeah, we
gosh.
have to take the responsibility for identifying these things now and going through the troubleshooting of making sure that we can, identify it and then
Mhm.
and fill that need. And it might not be easy, right? Because if we're trying to do this and we have a manuscript due and papers to write and picking up our kids or taking them to all the things that they have to do, it may be necessary to bring help on board. So if you have
Mm.
family members, this is where you communicate with them and say, I have this thing to do this evening. Are you able to come and stay with uncle, mommy, daddy, or are you able to take the kids? So we have to also be willing to accept help and ask for help because we
Oh,
can't do it by
I like that so much, Glenna. Like you said, a mouthful, and I could really relate. I have two, my dad's brother and sister. They're both living with cognitive impairment now, and one of my uncle was the pastor of a church that I attended back home. And
mm,
at first, I could see before my aunt was very reserved about like what he wanted to do in church. Like he wanted to get up and dance. Yeah, okay. He was my mama called him the dancing bear. He get up there. That's what he want to do in church. And so now, since everybody knows he's gonna be, if he's there, he's gonna be dancing. Like everybody just knows this is what he's gonna
Yes,
do. And so I agree with you wholeheartedly. Like I could really resonate with that. Like that was what he enjoyed doing in church. So obviously that's what comes out. And then
yes,
we adjust around him. Like you just let him go doing praise and worship. Hey, you dance as much as you want to.
exactly.
And
but what happens if the family is not comfortable with that? Because
Well, they
I
have to
feel
get
like,
comfortable.
either
That
don't,
is the
don't bring
but
thing.
him because
that's the
he's gonna.
thing, right? They should get comfortable, right? But I
Yeah.
think we're talking about the reality that people are not comfortable.
Yeah.
This is where the shifts have to happen, right? I love what both of you are saying is that they have to get comfortable because it's for the betterment of the person who's dealing with the the,
Hmm.
the cognitive impairment. But I've been in conversations with people where they're like, no, that's not really who they are. That's the
Mm,
dementia doing that. And so because that's the dementia doing that, I'm gonna keep them at home because I
mm,
don't want people to remember my relative like this. I don't want them to remember that they have outbursts because it's not always the dancing. Sometimes this cussing starts, sometimes the anger starts, right?
yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's embarrassing behaviors that people may feel protective of
Hmm.
the person dealing with dementia and says, I'm going to isolate them for their
Yeah.
benefit. But then what you're saying, Glenna, is that isolation may not be the best solution for them.
Isolation is never for their benefit.
Wow.
Isolation is often about us. So
Yes.
whenever I think we're thinking about, okay, we don't want them to have an outburst. So I remember interacting with a caregiver and what she says. So we know there are different types of dementias. So we have
Right.
Alzheimer's disease, we have frontotemporal dementia, and that has a few types. So we have Lewy body, we have vascular. So we have many types of dementia. And
Mm,
the symptoms of these may be reflected differently. And as the
mm,
disease progresses, it depends on the part of the brain that's impacted
mm,
that we might see different behavioral and psychological symptoms of dementia, right? So we can see anxiety, we can see motor changes, we can see sleep, we can see outbursts. So different things based on where they're at in the progress of the dementia or the type of the dementia.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that this caregiver said was she had a card and that she would take it with her. So, for example, if they went to a restaurant, she would give it to maybe the server. So she doesn't have to say it in for say like, my husband has dementia, but she would give the server the card, so they would the card would say my loved one has dementia, so that the server
Mm-hmm.
would be aware of what's happening if something, God forbid, happens, or if they go to a store and there might be interacting with somebody, or there might be a reason that he had an outburst, then you could apologize and then you can leave the card. So things like that. And it is about planning. So it would take planning. So if you're going out and you may predict that something can happen, first you can think about ways to, okay, how can I counteract that? Or if this is supposed to happen, what are some of the things that I can do? Because socialization does protect the brain, and it helps with, to an extent, that when you have this diagnosis, some people get depressed. Depression is one of the things,
Yes.
and socialization helps with that. And think about, if you're now home isolated, how much more that is going to increase your risk for that. Another thing I go back to is, so the colleague that I have collaborated with the sleep program is Dr. Firon Epps, and she developed the program called Alta. So Alta is taking dementia education into predominantly African American churches. So we know the stigma associated with the word dementia and saying the word dementia. So for her, it was, how can I empower my community to know about the disease and then support people living with dementia, especially if they were in your congregation and no longer comes to church, or if they're in your congregation, how can we support them so when they're in church, they are able to find comfortable spaces where they can be.
I love
Yeah.
that.
So it's unpredictable at times, but we definitely shouldn't ice we should reduce our how we whether no, not reduce. We should do our best to not isolate the
Mm-hmm.
person whenever they're living with the disease. It might be easier to do
Right.
because of unpredictability, but we should do our best to facilitate as is possible for them to have interaction. Many people do day programs now, so the person can attend
Mm-hmm.
their program. We have memory cafes that people can attend.
Oh, wait.
Um,
Memory Cafe.
Memory
Yeah,
cafe.
can you explain that? I haven't heard of that.
Yeah, so that might be areas, whether it's an eating area or a space
Mm-hmm.
where the caregiver and the person who's living with cognitive changes can come and interact with. So it's an open event where if you're a person living with cognitive changes and a caregiver, you can come and interact with people and just have it's a social activity
I
Yeah.
love that.
for.
Safe space
Mhm.
that,
I love
people
it.
Yes,
go, people come in there with cognitive and some things might pop off. But
yes.
I'm like, can
what's
I
happening.
join?
And if
That's
it
what,
does, we all are aware and know.
you're
So there's no,
aware.
you
There's
don't have
no
to be afraid
stigma.
of
There's no
judgment.
shame. That's
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
beautiful. I love
Yeah.
that.
And then
That's
I
We
also
don't.
like the point you made about the cards.
Mhm.
I guess that person took the initiative to create those.
Yes.
But I think that's amazing. It's
beautiful.
similar to some of the things you might do, kind of an alert band or something like
Mhm.
that. But it's a way for her to communicate with people to say, like, that this is something that's happening that is out of the person's control, and then of course mine as well.
Exactly. And it
So
maintains the personhood of the person who's living with the disease. So you don't
Yes.
have to say
Their
out loud, "Oh, this
humanity.
person has, the personhood is maintained." They don't have to feel a different way because they're different in this environment because of this disease. I've informed the people who we're dealing with. They
mhm.
know, but we don't have to announce it out loud.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
and I remember a point that Carolyn Clevenger mentioned, which is another one of our colleagues who does this care. But she mentioned that she oftentimes educates families about when there is something disruptive. And I have a quick clip. If we could cue the clip reactionary, and then on the back end, I want to address this question that I have. It's Dahlia. It's the divas and dementia clip. So we kind of sprinkled these in, Glenna, just so you know, to kind of react to some of the things that are out there. And so this is a TikTok video around someone with dementia, and just, you know, how do you respond to it? How do you you know, do it in a way that's not degrading, but also trying to meet the needs that you mentioned about the other person maybe needing, and how do you kind of decipher that? So
wait a minute, let me tell you. Okay, tell me. You do. Okay, because you keep walking up on me. Hold up. Come on, because they said your shoes. Look, around. You didn't have your shoes. They said your shoes was down here. You turn around. Okay, all right. You see it. I'll see it. Okay, great. Oh, look, there it is. Look. One of your shoes and one of your boys. Yeah. One of your little boys in your shoe. Get it. Yeah. Get it. Leave them in. No, don't leave it. Get it. Gee. Oh, my goodness. We're going to your apartment, okay? We're going to your apartment. I'm going to see, can I find your other shoe? Oh, boy. All right, stop the metal, okay. All right, okay. Oh, I'm tired. All right, right here in your apartment, go right in there. Go in there. Go right in there. Here, take this in there. Take the little boy in there. Okay, you got one girl on the bed. All right, I'm going to turn the light on. Okay. Go ahead. Go in. All right, go in. Yeah, you can go ahead. You could come with me. Come with me, Mama.
There were times where she seemed to be agitated, and she was like, "Let me tell you," like, and I remember, you know, in this circumstance, obviously she wasn't belligerent enough to even call like security or police or something like that. But in the home setting, because I have another follow-up question. She's actually in a facility, which can be expensive, and which people might not. And she looks like she's in a nice facility, right? Where we know things are happening with insurance and care issues. Like, that's a big thing. So affordability. So a lot of people may have to take this on at home. So I was thinking about carrying cost around, you know, cognitive decline and into the dementias, as well as just how do you deal with if someone is, you know, irate. I've been, I think what I remember about that is you don't necessarily want to call the police officers, or if you do, you're very strategic about telling them like they have dementia, like kind of giving them the checklist of the fact that they have this going on, so that there aren't any missteps in how it's approached. So I kind of wanted to get your reaction to that and some of the questions that I posed around it.
Okay, complex, lots of thoughts. So I think the first thing I would say in that situation, so she's definitely in a safe space and a safe environment there. The person who is doing it, I hope they have the go ahead and the okay of the relatives and the facility, well, the community. So I tend to not say facility anymore because it sounds so institutional. So I tend to say residential care communities. Where so I hope she has the authority and the go ahead from them to do that, because we have to think twice about filming residents and filming people when we're putting them on social media and things like that. So that's two of the ethical things that we think about. You know, social media is there, and it's easy to record and put on social media, but we have to consider the people behind it
Mhm.
when we're doing that. So I hope those two things are in place. Um, I think in terms of the way that she did the redirection, because whenever the person is having anxiety or pacing or something like that, it's oftentimes something maybe happening. So in this case, she was looking for her shoes,
Mhm.
um, and then she found one, but she was still looking for the other. And it's more than likely she probably took them off and put them somewhere and can't remember where they are. And
Mhm.
so the redirection was good there. I don't know what the policy of the facility is in terms of
Mhm.
how you manage with that. I'm sure there hopefully there's training and all that. The other thing that I think about though with 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 residential care communities is that many times we have people who are working with residents, one, who are not as trained as they should be to
Mhm.
specifically work with people who are living with cognitive changes and dementia. And
Yeah.
then they do so much. This is the hard work that they carry, but they're not necessarily compensated for the work that they carry,
Mhm.
even though many times the compensation for many residential care communities is a lot that is paid per month. So we just had the bill. I think they were thinking about legislature for nursing home health aides and nurses, and the number of residents per professional. They
Okay.
had brought it down, but I think they're taking it back up because it all comes down to who is able to advocate and have senators and
Lobbyists.
representatives,
Yeah.
yes, lobbyists, those people work for their causes. So this
Mhm.
is never often thinking about the person on the other end, but it's all about saving money and
Yeah.
making more profits.
Okay.
I tend to think about those two. I think if my personal opinion is,
Yes.
if you're able to find somebody who you can pay at home, it ends up probably being cheaper
Mhm.
than what you have to pay nursing homes to care for your loved one, and then you can oversee the care that is provided, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's not always feasible or easy to do, but when you're able to do that, I think that might be the best outcome for everybody involved.
Yeah.
So that is where I go when I think about that,
For sure.
and the importance of, nurses and health aides. Those people don't have lobbyists usually lobbying on their
Mhm.
behalf, right? It's
Right.
the nursing homes that want you to remove all these stipulations that often are there because of the safety and outcomes of the residents. And we tend to want these stipulations when we have negative outcomes for residents, which usually occur because when you have one nurse responsible for 20 patients in a nursing home, there's no way that you are expecting really great care, because the nurse isn't doing care. They're probably more responsible for overseeing in general and maybe
Mhm.
some medication
Yeah.
administration. So
Mhm.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
What you're describing, though, to me is it's like an institutional barrier, right? Like just the approach to caregiving from the healthcare system and business,
Hmm.
and what it looks like for elder care, for
Mhm.
care for these sorts of cognitive impairment situations. And it's when you think about Black communities and the other kind of barriers that we go through already, right? So we're already dealing with bias across providers from the lifespan. So, like from
Hmm.
pediatrics all the way to gynecology and beyond, right?
Yeah.
But now, even in when you're now at a point of your life where you really can't take care of yourself, you really can't advocate for yourself. And so, it's no wonder why we want to take care of our elders in our homes,
Right.
right? It's not always like a decision of financial, it's also like protective. So I'm thinking about it right now. I'm like, there's no way I'm gonna put my parents, they have some time, but I
Hmm.
don't see that as my first option. As hard as it is to care for people, I understand why we choose not to do that, right? Because it doesn't seem like we're going to get the care that we need, and our loved ones are not going to get the care that they need. So if we go to like caregiving within the family setting, right?
But
Back
I
to
want to add
yeah,
something. Our culture also tells
yeah,
us that we should take care of our loved
That's
one
true.
at home.
100%, 100%.
So
And it
so
always
there is
feels like
that,
a burden.
yes,
But can
there is
I
that cultural piece.
there
Yeah.
is a cultural piece, but I'll add that because kind of on the flip side of that, my dad at the end, he didn't have dementia, but at the end stages of where he was, we, because of where we stay, we had people who worked in the facilities that were related to us, who we trusted, that we knew he would be seen after, and like from administration to
Oh,
care,
that's
we
amazing.
knew who was taking care of him in the facility
So
because
that's
Yeah.
like
this
family,
wasn't.
right? That's like a
That's
home
family.
space
Yeah,
outside of home.
yeah. So
Absolutely.
we had eyes and ears on him the
That's
whole time he
amazing.
was in the facility. But it's because we're from a small town and we have people who work there. So
Mhm.
for us, we had comfort. And listen, we when I was in town, I was there when my brother was there all the time and my mom was there often too. So we didn't just put the onus on them. And we had family in and out. We have a big family. So we had family in and out all the time. So in that sense, I feel like we've done that with my mom's mom. We've done it with my mom's dad, and then with my dad, just because we had family who was there all the time, we felt comfortable.
Yeah.
So
So I think it goes back to, and I want to say that too, because sometimes you just don't have a choice. And when
Hmm.
you don't have a choice, not to necessarily feel, because there's a guilt that accompanies that when you
yeah,
have to place
Hmm.
your loved one because you don't want to place them. But
That's true.
sometimes when that's the only choice you have after you've evaluated all the other options, or
Yeah.
that might be the best choice, then
Yeah.
you have to do it. But even if you have to do it, like you said, Rasheeta, y'all were there showing up, being able to show up and continuing to show up if the person is in an assisted living or a
yeah.
residential care community is important, because when they see you there, they know, okay, this person's relative is coming to visit them, then we definitely have to be sure that they're safe, that they're clean, that we're taking care of them. So you might not be able to show up all the time, but having relatives and having family members visit them. And that's also important for the person who is living in the community, for
Right.
them to see familiar faces and know that they're still present with the people who they've always been present with in their lives.
And we would take them out too. Like
Hmm.
they weren't
Yes,
there all the time. We would take them out,
right.
especially if it was the holidays. They came
Hmm.
home with us for the holidays. So
Yes.
anyway, I just want to I'm thank you for that. And I think you're right. When you get to that moment, like I can't see myself doing that with my mom per se. Yeah, I get it. I get it.
Yeah,
But
it's a
it's not
tough
an easy
it's
decision.
not exactly. It's complex.
Hmm.
I think for me, it's just a frustration knowing that the institutions are not always looking out for our folks.
Right.
And with all the limitations with that, it's like you have the cultural expectation that's already been set, especially if
Mhm.
you're a daughter, right? It's expected. It's like, right? And then, but on top of that, there's also like the pressure of society where it's like they're not going to be first on the list to be regarded and considered in these communities or these care facilities. I would love for them all to feel like a community, but many of them feel like facilities, right?
Yeah.
And so because of that, it's like it creates angst even before you have to make that decision. So now thinking about sleep,
I was
there's
gonna
no
say a great segue into
there's
sleep
no
because we know.
wonder there's
Yeah.
no wonder why this particular demographic of people are struggling with sleep because of so many things they got to think about if the person is in their house or not. Like you're just constantly worried about this person's progression. That's like it's not progressing in upward, it's decline, right? And so that's a very stressful experience, and yet most of us are going to go through it. So, from your perspective, how do we prepare ourselves to go through this without like sleep being the thing that we give up?
So I would say, so we don't know that most of us are going to go through it, right? We continue to have research where we're working
Okay.
on therapies and
Oh,
things that are
yeah,
hopefully,
that's good. That's good. Yeah.
yes, going to be available. to reduce our risk and hopefully even ease back the process. One of the things we know is that age is the greatest risk factor
Right.
for developing Alzheimer's disease and other related dementias. But there are other modifiable factors. So we have the sleep, we have our exercise, we have our diet, we have our socialization, we have our mental and doing cognitive, making sure that we're still cognitively
Exercising that muscle. Yeah.
exactly. So we're exercising our muscles and our brain muscles,
Mm,
both ways. So doing those things and
mm,
continuing or encouraging our parents to do that with us too, so
mm,
that their risk is also decreased by doing
mm.
that. I think it's also having the conversations up front, because we might say ultimately we might be taking care of our parents, but we don't know that, right? Life is so unpredictable that we
Very
can't
true.
predict what is going to happen. And
Mm,
it's important to have those conversations up front about, okay, if something happens to you, what it is that you would want.
Mm-hmm.
And you might say you don't want to put your mom in a residential community, or I might not want to do that, but she might be fine with that. So having
true.
those conversations about
How do you start that conversation in our cultures, in our communities?
so I think this is a great Thanksgiving topic, right? It doesn't have to be, well, we are talking about nursing homes, right? But it can
Right.
be, we're all aging. And I was talking to one of my colleagues the other day, and she just mentioned that her mom was diagnosed with dementia. Or I'm here reminiscing about on granddad, and remember when XYZ, and kind of how did you approach, what decisions you made about how you took care of him? Did you just randomly come up with, my mom is going to do this today, my aunt is going to do this today? So kind of help me think about how you all came up
Yeah.
with how you made that decision. And now that you've decided how you made that decision, how do you think I should approach that if, God
Mm,
forbid, something like that is supposed to happen with
Oh,
me?
that's amazing. Like
I
Yeah,
that's
so
love it.
that's a
I,
whole prompt.
I
That's a
love
whole prompt right
it.
there.
I'm just gonna create a little bit of pushback because of
mhm,
the kind of conversations I've heard and
Yeah.
I've been a
mhm,
part of, where
mhm,
it's like, yeah, Rochelle, that's gonna be you
mhm,
because you're the girl, right? And this is what I've heard even my friends saying
mhm,
too. Like, so we have we have friend groups where we're supporting each other in
mhm.
anticipation of
Mm.
what we think is going to happen.
Right.
And
Without the
I,
people who you have to care for,
so what I
without
was
their
saying,
involvement.
so this is why I go back to the relationship, right? Because when
Mhm,
you spoke about, like, in the beginning, you mentioned the relationship status, right?
mhm,
I think the biggest part of the relationship status for me is what level of communication, intimacy do you have with that person?
mhm,
Because if you have a relationship where it is not just top down and it's authoritative, it's daddy and it's child, or it's mommy
mhm,
and it's child, but where you can have this conversation without seeming like you're calling death on people, or
Mhm.
this is my culture, right? So
mhm.
Yeah.
any mention of age is like you are putting a spell on someone, right? It's like you wish for them to go, and yet
Right.
you're
So
just
you
trying
can
to
get your
plan.
inheritance.
Yeah,
That's
and
what
it's
you're
like,
trying to
come on,
get.
let's be
You're
honest.
trying
Ain't
to get the
nobody
money.
inheriting. I don't know about y'all, but it is not that, right? So
Right.
that's not my story. But it's more of like, preparation and
Mhm.
destigmatization and wanting to be thoughtful and compassionate. And I love when you said, help me understand what would be best for you, right?
Mhm,
I love that approach because it's like I want to be supportive and I want to
mhm.
understand what support looks like for you and what you want this to look like. I think
Right.
with me and my children, I would be able to even preempt it before they come to me, but it's
Right.
Mhm,
because of how I'm thinking, right? So I think
Mhm.
our generation of parenting is just a little bit more open and different. But if I think about um, like baby boomers and older parents, that generation, there's still so much silencing about age. There's
yes.
silencing about health issues. There's silencing about cognitive, because this is like a mental health thing. That
Mhm,
that brings in the stigma of mental health, right? And so it's like, don't worry about it. God has it under control. Whatever God decides, we leave it up to God. And I'm like, okay, but it's going to be on somebody's plate and we've already seen it. And so what is it? What does, I think ultimately it requires a family member who's thinking about this and wants to plan and wants to be
Mm-hmm.
proactive, to be brave enough to open the conversation, knowing that there may be some pushback, but it needs to happen.
Yes.
And to,
And
and to try to bring that humanity into that difficult
mm-hmm. Yeah.
conversation.
And introducing it, you don't have to get the answer. You might not get the answer the first time you introduce it,
Mhm,
but then you
mhm.
have planted the seed.
That's right.
So it's
Yeah,
about planting the seed and getting, and my we always say, like, in qualitative research, you have to kind of identify the lens through which you're looking at
that's
things
right.
from, right? So I
Mhm.
was raised with my mom and my grandmother, and my mom lives with me now and helps me, well, my family, my husband and I, to raise Ellie. So because of that, her and I have a really great relationship where we can have these conversations.
Yes.
So it might be different, and it definitely, as we can hear, is different for others. So we have to also, like you say, think about the relationship that we have, and figure out how to plant the seed and see how the person responds when you initially
Mm,
plant the seed. But
mm.
never be afraid to still have that conversation, because ultimately you can say to them, you're helping me in the future. It
That's
it
right.
becomes easier for me to make a
Yes,
decision and be comfortable with that decision, because I
yes.
know this is what you would have wanted. I don't
Mm.
want to make a decision and have to rethink, is this what daddy might have wanted, is this and not
Exactly.
be comfortable and okay with it, and then feel guilty about the decision because I never knew, or I never had the conversation about what you wanted.
I love that. I
Yeah.
love that you said it's a Thanksgiving. So we
Hmm.
have, at the time of this recording, we have about a month, Rasheeta, to get our scripts
To get
together.
it out there. Right. No, I agree. And I will say, like, I too have a very close relationship with my mom. So we've actually
Mhm,
had conversations. I think this is a conversation in many facets of the aging process. So
mhm,
from literally any assistant living care. So and I want to bring in the cost factor, because
Hmm.
she has where in there are so many dimensions to that also, but she has where she has to draw down money for SSI, different stuff like that. And she has an insurance policy. And so I told her, like, invest that into something like an assistant living
Hmm.
policy, because that
Right.
the cost of that, I would rather you have the best care that we can afford. Like, you know what I mean?
mhm.
Because I've had just recently, just because we have so many people aging right now, but
Yeah.
where a family member had to be taken out because
Hmm.
the child's gonna have to pay money because the insurance didn't cover it after a certain amount of days. So you run up against a lot of that. You just I think we could probably maybe try and bring on somebody around just cost alone when you're in the
Hmm.
aging process. So Glenn, if you have any recommendations on that, because I think that needs to just get out there. Just
Yes.
knowing the insurance elements and how that might work with assistant living, also like being able
Medicare
to
and
qualify
Medicaid.
for Medicare and
Mhm,
Medicaid and not suck up all your assets
Hmm.
mhm,
because of that. Like, our community is oblivious and we get ravished by it because we
mhm.
have not planned well. But I told my mom, I was like, put that money into that insurance. That's a lot. But if you need it, like, I don't need, I
Hmm.
want it to go towards you. So that was one
Exactly.
point I wanted to make. And it's no different than the very crucial but uncomfortable conversation that should happen for preparation for people transitioning. It
Yeah.
Hmm.
We know everybody's going to do it, and,
Right.
Yes.
and so my mom, even we were recently at a funeral like 2 weeks ago, and it was a close family member of ours, and it was one of her best friends. They were like sisters, but they were first cousins. She spoke at the funeral and everything, but she really liked the funeral, and she was like, I might need to change where we do my funeral arrangements. So if I decide that, I'm going to tell you that I want you to go with this funeral home,
Hmm.
blah, 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 because I know now where she wants to be, but she was impressed. And so I'm just saying, like, yes, those conversations are uncomfortable, but they're
They're necessary.
Yeah, they're necessary. And even if it's not cognitive issues, like there may be healthcare issues overarching that where you might have to be making those decisions, and you really just want to have a plan in place. So
Yeah.
yeah, I just want to
And
kind
it reduces so much guilt and burden that the people who are left behind not knowing what it is that you wanted are left with, because they are the ones who have to go through the burden of
yeah.
making the decision and thinking, what would this person have wanted, because we never had those conversations. Like mommy and I have already had those conversations. We talk about healthcare proxy, and if you're ever, God forbid, in something, like, I don't want to go on any machines for like longer than this period of time. Like, mommy said she wants to be buried in St. Vincent, and she's like, I have the savings, so take me back there.
Right.
So
Home.
that kind of stuff. So I think it's important. It might be hard conversations, but we don't have to make it hard. Like, nobody's going to die tomorrow. We put that out there in the beginning, right? You're not dying tomorrow. In fact, you're going to live to be 120.
Right.
But
So long.
when you
Yes.
get there, then what is it that we're going to do? So
Yeah.
that we have both made this decision together, we know what it is, and then things can change. And when things change, the plans change.
I mean, it's so important because I had this conversation with our oldest son. Is to say, this is where all the paperwork is. This is what's going to happen. This is what, because we travel a lot, where sometimes, a lot of times, if both of us are out, and so who takes care of you in the event of a tragic anything, right? And I do remember my parents telling us that, like, if something were to happen to both of them, this is the person that will be there for you, me and my brothers. But I think now aging it feels uncomfortable, right? Because even the person who's going through it is also managing their personhood and the shifts and the changes. I remember watching my grandfather becoming aware of his forgetfulness. And I remember the day when my aunt said to me, he's no longer going to be driving. And I've known Grandpa to drive everywhere. He was a driver, right? My grandmother didn't drive. She was the person who had she was the GPS and was Waze before we had Waze, but never drove, right? So he drove everywhere. And I thought, my goodness, taking away his car keys, that just feels like pulling a part of his identity away. But because I'm close to my aunt, I could talk to her about like what that was like. But I remember thinking, I didn't want to ask my grandfather what it was like. I didn't want to bring it up, even though I was so close to him. I didn't want to make him think too deeply about it. And I wish, I love the work that you're doing, because I think the more we understand about the brain development or degeneration of the brain through the process of the different kinds of dementia and Alzheimer's, the more we will be able, as family members and loved ones, know how to talk to them and communicate with them without feeling, like, are we going to make it worse, right? Because we're like tiptoeing around, right? So now even the relationship with us as grandchildren, we're like tiptoeing around because we don't want him to feel any way. And so the last 7-8 years of his life was I thank God for the time to transition. I think if my grandfather passed away suddenly, it would have shattered us, right? So I always describe it as a very long goodbye, but also there was so many changes in the way that we spoke with him, about him, around him. And I wonder how much of that he, was maybe painful. I hope not, but I think about those things, and I think about that for potentially anybody else, even myself, if that were to happen to me. How would you want to be communicated with by the people who love you, and how do you want to be still integrated, even though you're going through these different massive changes? And I think you've offered us so many glimpses of hope, because you talk about keeping socialization constant, having early conversations about this before the decline is to the point where you can't have those conversations, managing their, humanity and their personhood, whether they're in a facility or at your house, right? Because I love even the point you made about the video was like, well, I hope they have permission, right? To even record, because that's exactly what I thought about too. I was like, do I need to write a note somewhere and say, don't record me when I get home?
Right.
Well, that
You
you
may
might
need
have to
to.
do. You
You
might
may need
that
to.
might be in your plan,
I
because
don't want to be
otherwise,
nobody's TikTok or whatever they got at that point,
yeah,
right?
you might have to
But please,
specify that, because even with I've noticed that people now are saying, please respect our privacy. Do not post anything on
yes,
Facebook or
Social,
on any
right.
social media. You
yes.
might have to build that in your plan.
I'm gonna have to tell
Yeah.
my kids, like, don't do, you know. But it's these type of conversations to think about and to destigmatize, to normalize it. I love having the conversation around food, because I think food kind of brings the setting down, and
More
doesn't feel cold.
casual.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right.
And
Yeah.
we're actually gonna be under one roof. We've done it for a couple of years now, where the family comes into Airbnb, and we cook
Oh,
together and
amazing.
everything. So maybe I will kind of figure out a way for us to. I might be able to record it too, so maybe
Well,
it'll
make
be
sure
like
you
a
get their
clip.
permission.
I
Right.
will.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, let's have a conversation, but maybe make it a game.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh,
I just thought about that. Right. Yeah.
I
So
love
Glenn, I might
that.
be kind of nudging you to see if like this seems like a really cool game, or like ask ChatGPT to create a game
Exactly.
Yes.
Yes.
around how to talk about crucial conversation around aging and care and
Yes.
things of
I
that.
love that. Brilliant.
Yeah,
Love
so
it.
that's really cool. We have
Yeah.
one more reaction video, unless and it's around. It has a sleep element to it.
Okay.
So Dolly is going to bring that up, and then we'll start to wrap up. But I mean, I don't know about anybody else. I gained so many points of some nuggets that I can use. Like the prompt you gave, Glenna, was amazing, just to get the conversation starter around this topic, and then also just what it takes to really think about the person who's going through it as well, like remembering their humanity and remembering that they still have needs around socialization, and how we can better equip ourselves to adapt to what's happening in our lives, for the betterment
And
of the person we love.
and before we bring up the video, I also want to say, so when I was, and even when I was a nurse practitioner and I saw both the caregiver and the person living with dementia in that case, and now when I do my dyadic interventions, you always include the person living with dementia. So you, as long as they can communicate with you, they're in the room, you get their feedback, you talk to them, you make eye contact with them, you communicate with them, because even as the decline is happening, that person is still there. So even if you have to touch their hands, so you make sure that you're not having conversations around them, but you're having conversations with
With
them,
them.
because
Yeah.
they're feeling still included in the conversation. And
Yeah.
especially if the conversation is about them, you're going to still help them make decisions. So even with my intervention now, I remember I had one dyad who I was working with, and her cognitive function was really, maybe her MOCA score was maybe like a 5, meaning that she could probably talk to you, but in terms of conversations and stuff like that, that wasn't necessarily prominent.
Yeah.
But we had to come up with some enjoyable things, that some pleasant activities. And many times you're told that older adults like to color, or they can do different things. And she was like, no, coloring is for children. Like, she did not want to do coloring. She knew she did not want to do coloring. So it is, even though we're making suggestions, we can still include them in asking, what is it that you would like?
Want to
And
do.
we can say X or Y, or providing two options so that they are able to still choose for themselves, as long as they're able to. So we shouldn't always be making that choice for them, thinking they're not able to do it, because even when their cognitive function may not be as high as it used to be, they're still able to know what it is that they like and they don't like, and they can make decisions about that.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So we're going to bring up that video. Me and Dolly has been going back and forth on which one. I had two options, so she helped make an executive decision on which one.
Mom? Hi. Did you miss me? Are you tickling me? Want to go potty? Great job. Pretty. Hi.
Fucking shit up. Shit, I'm gonna.
Why are you being mean to me? Why are you being mean to me?
Tell me.
Yeah, you're okay. I'm here to help you. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, can we get dressed? You're okay. Hey, listen. I'm here to help you. Can we get dressed?
Oh.
Can I help you? Can we put our pants on? Here, let's put our pants on. Yep, good job. I'll help you. We're gonna get dressed.
Yes?
Yeah.
Oh.
Look at Milo's here to help us. Look at him. He's just sitting here. He loves you. What sweater should we wear? Should we wear this one? Ooh. Do you like it? Say, I'm crabby today. Right? Let's see your outfit.
Tat.
Look right there.
To what?
Ooh. Pretty. Look it. Are you pretty? Look it, you're so pretty.
I think she did so many things right with regard to what you like. That was a really great, like, kind of wrap up to what you demonstrated. She gave choice. I thought she did an amazing job.
She did awesome. She was patient. She, she might not, her mom might not have been able to speak, but she was able to recognize. She gave comfort by hugging her. She, even when her mom like cursed at that one time, she paused and allowed her time. So that was really a great example of what we can do as caregivers, but that oftentimes require us to take ourselves and our feelings sometimes out of the equation. And for her, it probably took a while to get to that place, right? Of learning how to do that and what needs to be done and things like that. When it comes to providing care, but you can see it's not easy. And it requires a lot of that is definitely emotional weight that you have to take along with the physical thing that you have to do. And imagine if she has a dog, but imagine she has a husband and children too. So when you have that, it's sometimes figuring out whether or not you can involve them in the process, like we were just hearing about Bruce Willis's wife, who chose to put him in they have another house that he lives, and they have a caregiver 24/7, so the kids go over and visit and then they come back home. Or so you can have that approach. Or how do you integrate and involve them as they progressively decline? Because I also met and interacted with a couple the other day who the dad is pretty young, but he has dementia with young children. And how do you figure and work with that as
How
the
young is he?
disease progress? He is about 50.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah, my uncle's pretty young too. He's like in his 60s.
That's so young.
He don't have young children like that, but I mean he was fairly young, so it was very surprising. But yeah.
So we can all get back to seeing how sleep can be impacted. But one of the things I would say about that would be to maybe approach sleep as your time to, because sleep is an active process. So when we are sleeping, the body is doing a lot of physiological things. So it is during the day when we're awake, our brains build up a lot of waste products. So, amyloid beta and tau, which are two proteins that increase the risk for Alzheimer's disease and dementia. Sleep actually makes that process more efficient. So we have to sleep so that we can get those waste products removed and sleep. So sleep decreases our risk for developing Alzheimer's disease and dementia. When we're sleeping, we have the hormones. So you talked about obesity and the association with obesity. It's because of the leptin and the ghrelin, which are the hunger hormones that are secreted or not secreted when we're asleep. Then we have the cortisol hormone that is secreted or not secreted when we're asleep. So those the body's working when we are sleeping, and those are the things that we're doing, which is why sleeping is associated with so much of these not sleeping is associated many times with so much of these negative health outcomes, depressive symptoms, obesity, diabetes, these things, because the hormones aren't getting to be effectively and efficiently secreted if we're not sleeping enough.
Mm.
So seeing sleep as self-care
Mm.
as opposed to
Ooh,
it is something that it is that we have to we're
that's a
we're doing
card.
and we have to do.
We need to
Yes.
put that on a card. That's one of
Yes.
our
Yeah, I mean,
sleep
it
is
is.
self-care.
It
Sleep is
Yes.
is. It is. I feel it as a mom of three. Like
yeah.
I'm so one of the things I thought about with that video is that the caregiver wasn't acting sleep deprived. If she
Right.
was, she really kind of,
Hmm.
acted well.
Yeah.
Because if I'm thinking when you're sleep deprived, you can snap just, you know what I'm saying? You can have symptoms that
Yeah.
signal very similar, the similarities to decline and cognitive decline. So I'm like,
Right.
this is a well rested caregiver because if you're not well rested, you might smack or cuss the person back.
Yes.
Right. So if you're tired, they're going through cognitive decline. This is a bad recipe, right?
Hmm.
And
Mm.
so it's like you need sleep even to care for people. And
Yes.
when I realized that as a mom, when they would say sleep when the baby's sleeping, and people would be like, "How is she gonna do that?" Because you have laundry and that. But when I realized that it was literally for the betterment of me being a good mom to my
Hmm.
babies, like I could be kind to them, I could sing to them, I could hug them because I'm rested. When I'm tired, I don't want to see nobody,
Yeah.
not a soul, right? So it's like they're not. It's not safe around me if I'm sleep deprived.
Me too.
You know what I mean? So it's
Yes.
like the two things are together. Like you
Hmm.
have to sleep if you're going to take care of people, and if you take care of people, you have to rest. So it's like it is so critical these things. And when you spoke about this 50-year-old, I'm like, what was happening? Like, is this genetic? Is it behavioral? Is it environmental? Like, what are the main risks related to cognitive decline during midlife?
So there are it's a could be a multitude of things. So
Mm-hmm.
there could be some genetics. So we've seen increased risk in people whose loved ones has had dementia. So it increases your risk, but nothing is predictive.
Right.
There are genetic all the types of Alzheimer's disease. So the young onset tends
Mm.
to be more genetic compared
Yeah.
to like the
Mhm.
65 and older. But a lot of our risk factors are also lifestyle behaviors, right?
Right.
So smoking, diet, and we know that the foods, especially the foods in the US, everything is made with
Process.
all these. So now we have to be like, I'm trying my best to be more cognizant about reading labels
Yeah.
because there's so many ultra processed ingredients that are in the foods
Mhm.
that may not even be
Mike,
necessary to
is it
be in
like
the food.
microplastics and stuff like that, Glenna, or just
Oh,
like the processing,
the
the kind of
food,
like
right? The
the food
processed
The
processing?
foods,
pasta.
the type of
Mm.
oils that they use. I'm
Mm.
sure microplastics are associated with it. I haven't seen a lot of the literature with that yet because
Mm.
that feels pretty new still. So
It's
they're
yeah.
looking into those.
Mhm.
But like our diets, or we have like these high fat diets, and almost everything processed is
Yeah.
pretty much high fat, high salt, high sugar. So
Yeah.
those pieces. Then we have sleep, especially sleep in midlife, being
Mm.
associated with significantly higher risk of cognitive impairment and dementia with aging.
Wow.
So they're looking at a lot of that. But the thing is, so there is hope, right? The
Yes.
Alzheimer's
What's the hope,
Association,
Glenna? What's the hope? What's
they,
the hope?
they just came out with a study. I think it was at AAIC in July. So they didn't
Mhm.
study sleep in this one, but they added sleep to the other piece. Was that they provided a structured program of exercise 30 minutes a day. They did the Mediterranean diet, and
Mhm.
then they did brain health activities. So they made it structured for a group, and then they encouraged the other group to do it. And they found that over 2 years, and I think these were people like 50 to 65 or something. So over 2 years, both groups actually had an improvement in their cognitive function, but the structured group had more of an improvement, probably because they had more people following up with them and telling
Right.
them what to do, that kind of stuff. So there
Right.
are things that we can modify, that we have control over, that we can do to decrease our risk, ultimately for developing Alzheimer's disease or any other related dementias or cognitive changes. And it's never too late to start. That's the thing about it. Exercise, brain health exercises, and physical exercises, and sleep, and our just activity in general and our diet, those are always going to have positive health effects.
Amazing.
So,
Amazing.
Well,
That
and we
is
should
awesome.
aim to get at least 7 hours of sleep. So I think I need
Listen,
to put that
okay.
in there. The
Let me
goal
put
is
I
that
at
on
least
my.
seven
I'm
we
gonna
hours.
put
we
that on my
spoke about
board.
this
Yeah.
before, right? I think we talked. I know Rasheeta and I have talked about this many times, but there's something that I put in place this year where I'm shutting down at 8 o'clock. So I
Mhm.
don't go to bed, but I don't want to talk to nobody.
Hmm.
Yeah.
You know, I love my kids, kiss, kiss, by door locked, right? Because of this,
Yes.
because of this too, I realized that like just tracking, you can do food journals, behavioral journals, whatever. So since I'm doing this as a scientist, I said, let me do it for myself. And I realized that I need 2 hours to wind down
Hmm.
from the busyness of the day.
Hmm.
And I don't want to fall asleep to TV. I don't want to fall
Hmm.
asleep to like something that is requiring my brain to connect. So it
Hmm.
can be white noise, but not a
Mhm.
show, right?
Right. And we
So,
shouldn't have TVs in our rooms.
ooh, see
Oh,
now you asking for too much, Glenna.
Yeah.
But
Period.
um, Glenna,
No TVs in our
Glenna,
bedrooms.
Glenna.
people
Okay.
gonna
Yes.
fall asleep on their couch. That's all that's gonna happen. I know.
Listen. I did have one last question. I know we got to get out of here,
Right.
but I wondered about time of sleep. Like, is it
Yes,
when you're sleeping? Is it the nighttime? Is that the best time to get sleep? I know that there have been studies about people who work, night shifts and all of that,
Hmm.
and the life expectancy for those individuals were less than. So just to reiterate that the time of sleep and when the best time to sleep is, because like if I don't get the sleep that I do at night, like sometimes I'll sleep late into the morning, but
Hmm.
is that the best time for me to be getting that sleep? So
So,
just
so best sleep is sleep that tends to align with our circadian rhythm. So that means
Mhm.
the night and the day and night rhythm that our body has. So we sleep when the nighttime is and we're awake during the day,
yeah.
because that flows with the way that the melatonin and the cortisol is released by the
Exactly.
body. So I would say,
Mm,
best time to sleep would do your best between like 10
Yeah.
and 6 in the morning or so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
okay.
I feel the difference. This week, like, making that change of
Ooh,
saying if
I
I shut everything off by 9 o'clock,
Okay,
right?
well, we will
Yes.
release Glenna. Thank you so
Oh,
much,
Glenna,
Glenna. We
thank you so
we
much.
Yeah, we
appreciate
don't have to
you.
do this another time for
Yes,
sure.
you will be back because we have so
Yes.
many more questions, but we will take you down and me and Rochelle will wrap it up. So thank you so much,
Thank you
Dr.
so much,
Brewster.
You
Have a
are
Glenna.
great
welcome. And
weekend.
thank you so much for having me. This was good.
Amazing. Thank you for your work.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me.